Hello and welcome. I'm Mel from First Steps, and I'm here today with Adam. I'm bringing you these in conversation videos, which you'll find throughout our resources and on our YouTube channel. I'm talking to various different people about disordered eating, body image, exercise, all sorts really. So I hope that you'll find them as interesting and insightful as I have so far, because I've been really enjoying talking to different people. And I'm very excited to be with Adam today because Adam is a very passionate campaigner, all things eating disorders, mental health, and equality. Adam, I just really admire how you are on Twitter, your honesty and just your presence and talking about these things and reducing stigma and creating awareness. It's so awesome. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start, if you're okay with you just telling me a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about your experiences.
Yeah. So firstly, thank you for letting me be part of this. My name is Adam. I'm 24 years old. I'm currently living in Milton Keynes, but originally from up north in the Lake District. I've had an eating disorder since I was about 11. I had sort of minor body image issues before that, but nothing major. But then my eating disorder started when I was 11. It didn't start with a diet or wanting to lose weight. It simply started with a transition in secondary school, and I've never really got to the bottom of it much, but sort of like a feeling of being unsafe, sort of out of my safety zone, I guess. I was always seen as a very confident and outgoing one, and that was all sort of a big mask right from a very early age of maybe a lack of self-confidence within, which when everyone says, "Oh, you'll be fine," and then I wasn't, it really did hit me. I was always quite academic as well, and I think the pressure of that didn't help. But sort of throughout my time of having an eating disorder, I don't want to go into too much detail because obviously detail can come in a bit and it's a long, long story and no one wants to hear all of that. But I've tried to get support multiple times for my eating disorder. My parents have taken me to numerous doctors, specialists, everyone under the sun basically, and every time it's been declined. Right from about 2-3 weeks after I started struggling with my food, right up until the most recent time. Just before we got on the call, I just said I've been declined by eating disorder services yet again. So it's just an endless sort of task really. The only time I was ever under services was when I ended up being hospitalised when I was 18. I'd gone to uni. My eating disorder was and is a restrictive eating disorder, so I had lost some weight, quite a lot of weight. But my GP at uni at that time said you need to lose a little bit more weight before we can help you. Even though my observations were already appalling and physically I was very, very, very unwell. Even things like trying to go any faster than a walk, I was falling over trying to run and that sort of thing. It was that bad. Again, I'm never going to go into details about anything, and no one ever should. In my opinion, as an advocate, we shouldn't be triggering other people. And numbers and weights are very, very far from the full stories we all know. But so when I was admitted, I was admitted to a general hospital. It was never an eating disorder hospital. I was never given any psychological help. Never given any meal support either. Just put on the general hospital menu, which was a general hospital in South Cumbria. So it was, you got a choice of two different things, and if you didn't want any of them, then your parents had to bring stuff in for you, which they did. And I will admit, I did nip out to the shops a few times as well. But they, that wasn't a nice experience in a general hospital, being 18 years old and very vulnerable. The crisis team came in at lunchtime and told me to stop eating my lunch, which was a good start. And then the relationship sort of didn't go very well from there after I was discharged. Their first comments was me and my mum were sitting in an appointment, and the first comment was something must have gone wrong when you were younger, which really got me and my mum's back up. Because obviously my mum was sitting right there with me. My parents have been the one who's kept me alive for the last 6 years while services refused to. So, where's the it just doesn't make any sense. And then I think that was closely followed by we've never had a man in our services before, so we don't know what to do with you. And sort of being a male with an eating disorder has been a recurring theme of missing, and I'm sure we'll get onto that in a bit as well. So I don't want to go into too much detail right now and spoil the fun. But But yeah, that was the only time I was on services. And I never started any treatment because they spent 6 months trying to fit me into a funding bracket and never could, even though I was severely underweight and unwell at the time. I ended up discharging myself because it wasn't helping me. But yeah, since then I've just everywhere I've moved to Birmingham. I've now lived in Milton Keynes. I've tried to get on services in both places and been declining in both places. I do pay for nutritional support now, which is really helping me in that side of things. But obviously, there's a big chasm of mental health support. The only thing I've ever been offered is 12 sessions of CBT, which we went in and me and the CBT therapist already agreed it wasn't going to work, but we had to try it because they had no choice. And that's about all I've ever received from the NHS services anyway. And again, I'm not knocking the NHS; it's not their fault. It's the system's fault, as I say it. But things have to change, otherwise, if I go back and think my 12-year-old self again right now, would it be any different? Sadly, probably not, especially where I lived at the time, and that's what we need to change.
Yeah. And I guess this is why you're such a tireless campaigner of this, because it is just affecting your every single day life. And this has been such a long journey for you so far, and just to be turned down from everywhere you go in that way, oh, it's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. I just want to say that I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I know that doesn't necessarily, yeah, that doesn't mean that much, but it's just it's so angering that we're in this position. Okay, so there's lots I could ask you from there. Let's start with this thing of we've never had a man in our service before. Is that that's really what they said to you?
That's the quote, yeah.
Oh, there's often there is a stigma, isn't there, generally, men and mental health, but particularly in eating disorders, because I guess it's seen as especially restrictive eating disorders, it's seen as a female thing, isn't it? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. I think it was weird before mine started or developed, how you want to call it. I didn't even know about eating disorders. I didn't know they existed. I was an 11-year-old. I didn't know eating disorders existed, and then suddenly I had one. It was like I hadn't. The first time I heard the word was when the GP told me it. A couple of weeks after I'd started struggling. So I didn't even. There's this perhaps misconception as well in general with eating disorders that it's people think it's a fad or a phase or something like that. It's not, because most people, no one wants to have an eating disorder firstly, right? And the people that say they do really don't anyway. And I didn't even know what one was. Yet here was me with one, and it was really, really difficult to take. But yeah, being a man especially has been, and I know women have just as big a problem. So I'm not just saying it's a problem with males eating disorders, because it isn't, and we know women have huge, huge issues as well. But from my own personal perspective, it was definitely been a means to prevent me have certain treatment, certain help, certain diagnoses as well. That stigma of saying we've never had a man in our service before, how little confidence does that give me that I'm going to be able to be helped by those people? But it goes further than that as well, though, because the GP didn't understand that, or no one understood that my testosterone levels could have dropped because of it. Why didn't I grow for 3 years in my teenage years? Why did I never develop fully? Why did I have to diagnose myself with low testosterone? And why was it never even checked before I diagnosed myself with it? And these are all the questions that I ask, and it's where we ask women about, have you lost your period? And this, yes, this is generalized around restrictive eating disorders, understood, but it's really important. Women, have you lost your period? Men, have you lost your testosterone? Are you getting erections in the morning? Are you getting your sexual desire? Anyone from sort of middle teenage years onwards will, if they lose that, if they don't grow, if they don't grow body hair, things like that, why aren't we asking these questions? Because it's serious developmental stuff here that we're on about. It's not just a temporary thing. It could be permanent damage to someone's body. I think that's a huge thing we're missing. But also the way eating disorders in men are diagnosed. So, I became severely unwell at a higher BMI than what would be classed as severely underweight. And again, we're not using numbers here because it's not a point, but there is, and I know there's growing evidence now that men with restrictive eating disorders can become severely unwell at higher weights as well, because their muscle mass tends to be higher if you've got testosterone naturally you tend to have more muscle mass, therefore you tend to lose that muscle mass quicker, but then that can cause massive issues with your kidneys and your heart as well.
Mm.
And but it goes further than that as well, because you've got your other eating disorders like orthorexia and exercise addictions and things like that, which come out in men as and women as well, and to some extent, but men especially, as people looking for a certain physique or looking for a certain health gain. And even the crisis team said to me, "What sort of physique do you want?" And that shouldn't be said by eating disorder services, because that in itself is weight stigma and body shaming someone for having a certain physique and recovering to their natural body, rather
Mm.
than everyone has a natural body and we should embrace that, rather than just go for a certain type that we think is attractive in life.
Mm. Yeah, and you said that weight stigma, and that is what it comes down to, isn't it? All of this is weight stigma. All these assumptions that sort of people might make of that you're looking for a particular body type, or that you're not female, so you wouldn't have a restrictive eating disorder. All of these are just assumptions, stereotypes, largely based around weight stigma and fat phobia of
Yeah.
this sort of. And unfortunately, one of the things that I've heard quite a bit as well is people in eating disorder treatment say that they've been told, "Don't worry, we won't let you get fat."
Yeah.
So weight stigma and fat phobia can still run all through medical treatment. I mean, everybody's grown up in this culture, right? So like, no one's immune to it. No one's immune to it. It really saddens me. Obviously, the BMI criteria is a huge problem in the eating disorder world, and it stops so many people, women and men. And I also just want to, I guess, flag up that like it must be so difficult for people who don't identify as male or female. I don't at all want to take away your experience, because obviously it's really difficult, as you don't want to take away the experience of women, but it's difficult for everybody. But then trying to sort of navigate having any kind of gender dysphoria
Oh,
and
yeah.
that, and the difficulty of having like gender affirmative care for people is so hard as well. Um, and it's just, yeah, I don't, and I mean, you'll probably agree, we're not sort of blaming anybody or NHS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
absolutely.
yeah, it's the system, as you say, isn't it? The system.
It is. I mean, we know that in the LGBTQIA plus community, eating disorder rates are higher, and there's got to be a reason for that. And it's not just the genetic factors or the biological factors. There is more to it than that. And there must. I don't. I can never understand what it must be like to be in that community, and how oppressed they must feel every single day, especially people who are either feel unsafe about being themselves, or it must be so difficult. But that is something that definitely needs to change, and that I don't know how we do that, but I think we need to work together for everyone, because it's the LGBTQIA plus community, it's the Black, Asian, ethnic minority communities who are suffering in silence a lot more than maybe other people, because they have an extra layer of stigma attached to it, I think, as well.
Mhm,
Even beyond what me as a cisgender white man does, um,
mhm,
and
mhm,
that's stigma enough with an eating disorder being a man. It's stigma enough being a woman with an eating disorder,
mhm.
because the word eating disorder is stigma enough. Never mind any of the extra layers of complexity you put on top, and it must be so difficult. And I can't imagine how it must be for them. So I think like you said, services need to improve to be more inclusive and include everyone in the conversation, but also in the research they do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so many barriers, isn't there? And if there's barriers to maybe the people who are seen as the stereotype, kind of younger, thin women with eating disorders, if they're facing barriers, then everybody else is going to step up to find all those barriers. And I wonder how much kind of unmet need there is because of people just being too afraid to go to ask for help, to go
Mm.
to their doctor, or ask for any kind of help at all. And that's covering so many people, definitely people in larger bodies as well, because from some of my own experiences as well, I don't look forward to going to the doctor, because I anticipate that they're going to just tell me to go on a diet.
Yeah.
They've not been doing too badly recently, actually, not too bad at that. Um, there's some good ones out there, but I mean, it's hard to navigate this stuff, because you kind of have to recognize that you need the help in the first place, then asking for help is really hard. And then when you get that help and someone says something that's stigmatizing, there's so many ways in this, there's so many barriers and so many doors closing that it's making it so hard for people to get treatment. And I also think in terms of, personally, I wonder in terms of class as well, in terms of like being working class, like growing up seeing lots of people around you on diet. Again, I think I'll maybe just need to speak from my own experience in this. It's like just growing up with every woman around me on a diet, yet men don't have to worry about it. Just this like sense of it just being very normalized. And never ever would have thought that I had disordered eating, never at all, because it was just normal. So I wonder how many communities there are in different cultures as well, and certainly, you know, in different culturally diverse backgrounds. Even recognizing you have an eating disorder might not be possible. Then if you do, you might not be able to go and access help because of the stigma. So there's so many people, isn't there? There's so many people that aren't getting the help that they need. And I do wonder if the world really saw the people with eating disorders, it would look so different to what we think it is, because it would be people of all different backgrounds, and there'd be a lot of people in larger bodies as well.
Well, we know that as well. We've got evidence to prove that. The recent NHS health survey proves that most people with eating disorders are in larger bodies. It's not even it's not even it's not a minority, it's a majority. Because people with a restrictive eating disorder, I've been diagnosed with atypical anorexia because I'm not underweight, because that makes any difference. But we know that's less than 10% of people that have anorexia as a diagnosis, but that's the only one that's ever talked about. It's the only one the media ever talks about because it's the most socially acceptable one. Binge eating disorder is not socially acceptable. It's gluttony and greed, apparently. It's not. That's what I'm subphrasing what they're saying. It's not at all. It's complete opposite. It's a serious illness which needs treatment, like anorexia does, like bulimia does, like anything else does. But they don't see it that way because it's just so highly stigmatized in society. You see, and there's some amazing campaigners like yourself and like other people who campaign for eating disorders treatment for all people of all body sizes, and they do it, and then that gets posted on social media, and all they do is get fat shamed. It's like, you're part of the problem. You're oppressing the people that need the help. And it's because we've normalized diet culture so much in society, and even the government is normalizing diet culture. And without getting too political, these obesity strategies, whatever the heck you want to call them, are dangerous to not just to people with eating disorders, but to everyone. To every single person in society, they are dangerous, statistically dangerous. You're more likely to develop an eating disorder by going on a diet, including calorie counting, than you are to actually have that help your health. And even say help your health is a loaded word, because what they mean by that is you lose weight over a sustained period of time, which it doesn't always correlate with health gain, and we know that for a fact too. It's just it's that they are. Every single bit of public health policy is going right against every single bit of evidence we now know is correct, but they're just following the money, in my opinion, and that's what the problem is. And what we need to do as advocates, campaigners, charities like yourself, and you're amazing for advocating for people eating disorders in larger bodies as well, because it's not seen enough. And every single time if I get contacted by the media, I just say, are you doing things on other eating disorders as well? Or are you just going for people who are underweight and anorexic? Not that I'm underweight anymore, but it's who have been underweight even, because it's not just that, and we need to get away from that, because it's harming people and stopping people getting the help they need as well.
Yeah, it is. It's really stopping people getting the help they need, and it's buying into that narrative. Like the government obesity strategies very much buy into that narrative. If you just move more and eat a bit less, then you'll be thinner, and that means healthier. And it's so short-sighted, and it's so I mean, it's not just that it's so short-sighted and it won't work, but as you say, it's really dangerous as well. Calories on menus, really, really dangerous. for anyone in recovery, but also anybody who's sort of dieting, or anyone who might be on the cusp of getting, but falling into disordered eating. There's so many people that's harmful for. It will keep people, not with eating disorders, but sort of people who are in yo-yo dieting, it will keep them in that. And then they do, diets don't work. Ultimately, with every diet, you end up putting more weight on. And then, but I guess these government obesity strategies are not looking at actual long-term health. They're just reinforcing the idea that if you're fat, that is your fault and you need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And putting that kind of blame and shame back on people who are struggling with dieting, disordered eating, any problems with food, putting that blame back on people is so dangerous. Because living with that shame, and that is going to affect your confidence, your self-esteem, keep you entrenched in those behaviours.
100%. It's like, the analogy I always use is, if I went to the doctor with back pain, I'd get a scan. If someone in a larger body went to the doctor with back pain, they'd get put on a diet. And that's where we're going wrong.
Yeah.
Same symptoms. And that person who's in a larger body could have an eating disorder, could have a restrictive eating disorder already.
Yeah.
And you're telling them to go on a diet, which is actually could make things worse for them, or will make things worse for them.
Yeah. It's not being recognised, but it's also being worsened, because there's this reinforcement from society, from medical professionals, from everyone around you in a larger body, you've got to lose weight, and it's such a hard thing to try and push back against. So understandably, people are feeling that, and they want to, and they get scared. People are scared because the language used around obesity is very violent, isn't it? It's like war on obesity and fight it's really violent language. So I think people are really scared.
Yeah.
Because people are being told by their doctors that they're going to die, and it's a terrifying thing. And then it keeps people in these disordered eating patterns, and there's no long-term help there. There's no real help. There's no real help at all. Yeah, I guess it's really important to say as well, like we touched on before, somebody in a larger body can have a restrictive eating disorder. Someone in a smaller body can have binge eating disorder, but it's not going to be seen like that. And also they're very tick boxy as well, aren't they? Eating disorders are very, I think not many people really fit into one, and that's where they sort of end up in the other category, eating disorder. No one specified it, the other one. And this is where a lot of people fall, because they're not there's not enough knowledge around it. There's not enough correct knowledge around eating disorders generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in services, and that's the worrying thing, I think, is that even when you get help, there's not really, I don't think there's enough knowledge out there to help people. Because like the comments of, don't worry, we're not going to make you fat, or what sort of physique do you want, or putting people who've never, for example, calorie counted in their lives, putting them on a calorie limit, or saying your target weight is X. That's all you're doing, is you're introducing the behaviors to someone who didn't have that maybe previously. The phrase I've used, and it's taken from another charity which I've done some work with, is state not weight, and that's what we have to go for. It's about more than just the size of the body. And also, I think services as well need, and everyone, medical professionals, but general public, need to learn about, and body positivity movement has its critics, right? But I prefer to call it body liberation, because we are embracing all bodies of all shapes and sizes. It's, sometimes certain communities can go, well, we're just advocating fat bodies, not thin bodies. And it's like, well, no, we should embrace every single body. If you're naturally large or naturally small, it doesn't matter, because everyone should be accepted for who they are, and we shouldn't try to change who someone is naturally. We should just be trying to help them become the best version of themselves, rather than make them fit into this neat little box.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I suppose a lot of this would come with better training for professionals, which would include weight stigma, fat phobia, and learning more about, diverse groups of people and their needs and how they can be supported as well. Um, and that's very difficult within our NHS that is struggling at the best of times, especially at the moment after the pandemic and everything. And from the top, from policy and government strategies and things, this is where I suppose campaigners, like us, that we just need to keep sort of stabbing away at this, because it's that change from the top that we need, really. I think that probably the individuals and the people working in eating disorder services are probably just trying their best within this, aren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely. There's nothing. I've never got anything against the people working in the services, because they do their absolute best every day with zero resource. It's got to come from the top, and things. There is a very slow creep in the right direction. I think people in high up positions are becoming more and more aware of things. It's just not quite getting through to the right people yet.
At least I suppose people have got platforms now, really. I mean, social media can be very difficult at times, but at least it gives more people platforms. Certainly for myself, I've been able to learn so much about eating disorders and body acceptance through following people on social media that have just, opened my mind, really, given me such opportunity to learn and see things beyond my perspective, because I would have thought the same about eating disorders when I grew up as well. I saw female friends with restrictive eating disorders, but then actually there was a male friend of a friend who had an eating disorder too, and that blew my mind at the time. It's probably in my teens, and I was like, but oh, that does happen. That does happen to boys, and that was a while ago. But yeah, I do think that this would probably happen now. I feel like eating disorders are still seen as quite a niche thing.
Yeah.
And especially, and maybe for counsellors and psychotherapists as well, as I'm a trainee counsellor, that maybe it's seen as quite a separate thing to go and train in, like a niche. I personally feel like everybody could benefit from having some general knowledge around dieting, disordered eating, those sort of blurred lines, and weight stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose I kind of we might have scared people a little bit, maybe, by accessing help. So I suppose I'd like to try and end on something a little bit more like, what have you been doing to help yourself now at this stage? Because obviously you face a lot of barriers. So what have you done? What can people do?
Yeah. So first of all, I know we say a lot about things and services and everything, but I would never, ever, ever advise someone doesn't seek help if they're struggling. If you're struggling, seek help, and if you don't get it first time, keep trying, because you deserve that help. Regardless, you deserve that help. There's charities who do it too. First Steps, just give you a plug there. Great charity. You've got Beat, you've got Feast, you've got Seed. There's loads of different charities out there who can and will help. So first thing I'd say is, yes, there's horror stories, and yes, things haven't been great for me, but I would still advise people to seek help, because you've got to ask for what you rightly deserve and seek that support you rightly deserve. But for me, my family's kept me going through this. Okay, without my family, I'd be nowhere. Now I understand not everyone's lucky enough to have as close a family as I do, but my personal perspective is, a family isn't who you're blood related to. A family is who you're closest to and who you have unconditional love with. And whether that's family, whether it's your friends, it doesn't matter. You can find a support network, and if you can find a support network, you can have that. And it doesn't make things better. It doesn't equal recovery, because most people need professional support for recovery. But it can keep you going and keep that hope that you will one day get there. And that's what I've got right now, is that hope that I will get there. And that hope is really actually quite powerful, because that's what keeps people going, is hope things will improve. And you can see glimpses as well, and there's times where things are a little bit easier but then there's times a bit harder. But recovery isn't the way I like to view recovery. It's not a straight line. So you start there on recovery, you might go up for a bit and then come down again. That down feels as low as right down there, but it's actually higher up already. You've already recovered. And that's really powerful if you look at it in a different way. It's how we view our perspective. As I said, I do have some nutritional support. I'm lucky enough to be able to afford a bit of nutritional support, and that's really helping because it's allowing me to have someone help me with normalizing my eating patterns again and eating for the lifestyle that I have personally as well, and making sure that I stay healthy. Um, and again, there's ways and means of supporting people through that as well. And there's charities that can help. They do some charities have dietitians and things which can help with a little bit. And as I said, it's not the same as maybe having professional services, but it can keep people going and keep people that hope that things will get better for them. I'd also say that, as advocates, yourself, myself, a lot of other people as well, we are pushing and pushing and pushing for things to change, and people are speaking up. The media is reporting things a lot more now. Yes, it's not brilliant. Yes, it's only sort of single planar about certain eating disorders, but it's getting there. So we are making progress, and sometimes within all the rubbish and the government policies and the timing of those government policies especially seems to be awful, but you can sometimes get blinded by that and not actually realize the bigger picture, I think. And I'm not saying it's brilliant, and I'm not saying everything's good, but I'm saying that there is hope ahead, that things can get better, and I just want everyone to hold on to that hope, because that's what's kept me going through it. That and family support, and you know we can make things better, and the more people that speak out, the better. The more people in more diverse populations that speak out, the better. If you're in a larger body with an eating disorder, if you're from a different culture with an eating disorder, if you're doesn't matter. Speak out. If you're from the LGBTQIA plus community with an eating disorder, speak up. Make your experiences heard, because actually it will help you. It's quite nice in a way to be speaking out, and it does help offload some of that pressure as well, because you've got people who will then come on and go, yeah, actually I'm struggling too, and you realize that you're not alone in this fight, and we're all in this together. Actually, we all want the same thing, and we're all pulling in the same direction, and the more voices we have, the more impact we can have as well.
Absolutely. Really seems like your campaigning is actually a really positive driver in your recovery as well. Do you think that's, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, social media can be a absolutely awful place sometimes, but it can also be a brilliant place. And there's a really, really nice community that we've got on social media that is really supportive, like unconditionally supportive of each other. And using that platform to help campaign is, yes, it can be draining at times. Don't get me wrong, campaigning and advocating. It can be really, really draining. But knowing that even if you're helping one or two people, it's worth it. For me, it's worth it anyway. Not for everyone, and you've got to be in a safe place to do it. And I wouldn't suggest anyone just goes ahead and does it if they don't feel in a safe place or they're really struggling themselves, because it can take a lot out of you. But if you're in a safe place yourself and you feel that you're able to have that sort of headspace involved in that, then it can be a really helpful place too.
hmm Yeah, it really can. And it's very affirming to see other people online. It's really affirming to see your tweets along with other people's, that really just go, yes, that's what I believe in. And it helps light a fire in me and many others as well. So I think there's so many people that you're helping. And I think, just, yeah, keep on doing this amazing work that you're doing, because honestly, it's incredible. Thank you so much for being here and for doing everything you do.
No, thank you too. I really appreciate the work you do too. It's really, really good, and appreciate being part of this too.
Oh, thank you.